What's up, YouTube? It's Chris Ruggieri, otherwise known as Knee Account Phoenix, and I'm back. But today we are trying something a little bit new. This time we are here for the first ever Knee Account Phoenix podcast. I'm super excited, super happy, stoked, and ready to get into this conversation because today we are discussing one of my favorite topics to argue about, and that is the post-COVID-19 workforce. The work from home versus return to office versus a forced hybrid. Before we get into all this, though, please like, share, subscribe, all the things. Help me grow this channel so that I can get more content out there and say a lot of the things that most of us want to say, but for whatever reason, can't or don't. And also maybe to provide just a little bit of an outside, abstract, different perspective on some of these topics. Also, legal disclaimer, CYA. Everything I write, say, all of it, it is strictly my own personal opinion, my own personal observations, calculations, and predictions. Also, last name is Ruggieri. I'm Italian. Obviously, I'm going to talk with my hands. Lastly, on that, all the things I do, everything, website, socials, all of it, it's powered by caffeine, sarcasm, and insanity. So, let's get into this. This was originally going to be part 4 of that post-COVID-19 workforce series and was scheduled to drop this past Saturday, February the 10th, 2024. If you want to read the first 3 parts, I will be putting a link to the article section of the Knee Account Phoenix website in the description and pin it at the top. But anyway, this was originally going to be part 4 of that series. But here's the thing. There are so many organizations that are implementing these return to office mandates or forcing these hybrid options or forcing a fully remote option that I felt it warranted a face-to-face, see what I did there? Podcast. And here we are. My first ever Knee Account Phoenix podcast. Again, super happy, super stoked. And we are back to having the same back and forth for the past, 4+ years now? And like the current geopolitical climate, it is escalating rapidly. My position, as is evident by those first 3 articles, has always been don't force either direction. Provide the options. Listen to your employees' feedback. Let your employees choose. 4 years, and that is the one thing that hasn't changed. 2022 Southeast Cybersecurity Summit in Birmingham, Alabama, I said the exact same thing. Give your employees the options and let them choose. But now, we're 2 years later. We have hard data on the biggest piece and crux of this issue, and that's forcing one direction or the other. So let's go through some of that data. And all of the articles that aren't mine that we go through today, I'll put them in the comment section, pin it to the top. Y'all can have full access, have fun, enjoy, peruse at your leisure. First, we've got Google. Yep, I'm going to pick on our friends at Google for a minute. Back in March 22, Google says, April 4th, everybody's back in the office. No, this is not an April Fool's joke. Come on. Get back. We just built this huge facility. I'll get to that later. Come on back. March 2022. June 2023. Google workers hit back at return to office ruling. Your employees are going to war with you. Things are looking grim, hence the escalating rapidly. Part of it is Google is tracking attendance, which, everybody does in their own way, but they're doing it with a badge tracking policy. CNBC got a hold of some messages from staff. Don't know if they're supposed to have them. Not going to go there. That is not my circus. My monkeys fly. Messages from staff seen by CNBC include, check my work, not my badge. Think about that mentality for a second about checking my work, because that's going to come up very shortly. And another message that they got was, if you cannot attend the office today, your parents should submit an absence request. That actually made me chuckle. I was trying to take my emotions out of all of this, and I'm going to be honest with you. When I read your parents should submit an absence excuse, I'm like, what, you want my mommy to write a sick note? What are we in kindergarten, elementary school? Come on. We are professional adults. Treat us that way. Give us the respect that we have earned by busting our backsides. I thought that would be a kind of an interesting perspective coming straight from Google employees. Now we've got a Fortune.com article saying push to nail hybrid work and bring its 165,000 person workforce back to the office part-time. This goes to the forcing a hybrid option. In particular, this is the piece I want to highlight. Joan Williams, director of the Center of Work-Life Law at the University of California, said, I don't know whether it will work. It sounds like Google doesn't know if it will work. Now, as I said before, my brain is powered by caffeine, sarcasm, and insanity. The place we all go to when we want to figure out how something works so we can either break it, duplicate it, fix it, whatever, the place we go to search for the answers doesn't know if it will work. I found that just hilariously ironic, but that may just be the, again, caffeine and sarcasm and insanity. Now we'll get into SAP. This is from MSN. SAP's office mandate causes outcry. Over 5,000 employees protest the return policy. Internal petition, 5,000 signatures in 2 weeks. This just happened a week ago. To be exact, 13 days ago. Not even 2 weeks. Feel betrayed by a company that encouraged us to work from home. And it's a stark contrast to the previous commitment of and they quoted this, 100% flexible and trust-based workplace. Trust-based is another one of those common themes. Keep it in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to it in just a few. Still talking about SAP. Return to office at Europe's largest software firm, which that is SAP, saying the same thing. 5,000 signatures in 2 weeks. Feel betrayed. Radical change in direction. Not happy about it. It's proving employees don't want this. Companies, and they did the possessive, not the plural, hardline stance on returning to office is backfiring. Thousands of employees feel betrayed, threatening to quit. Right here, with many threatening to leave rather than return to offices or work on site with customers at least 3 days a week. That is staggering when you have that many employees in 13 days that you're now forcing into having to choose, do I just just go with it with this, or do I look for something that has the options and doesn't force it? Now we're going to pick on Zoom a little bit. First, they had a layoff. Now they're having a return to office mandate. Com confirm that workers living within a 50-mile radius at least 2 days a week. So the opposite side of the 3-2 split of SAP. SAP was 3 in the office, 2 remote. Zoom was doing 2 in the office, 3 remote, still forcing a hybrid option, and is a full 180-degree change on what they'd previously said. Think about that for a minute. The pinnacle of work from home tools that thrived so hard in the pandemic has done a complete 180. And a lot of their employees said no. Only 2% of the workforce. Zoom actually had to roll this policy back a little bit because of how much pushback. And again, this was January of 2022, so a couple years old now. And this goes to what I just said. Zoom, thriving during the remote work revolution, wants workers back in the office part-time. Right after a layoff of 1,300 people, which is about 15% of their workforce. That's a hard hit because now you have to weigh, if I don't follow this, am I going to get fired? If I can't follow this for whatever reason, am I going to get fired? Fear will make people do some very... I'll get to decisions based on emotions later. Trust me. And now we're going to pick on IBM a little bit. IBM tells its managers, come into the office or you don't have a job. If you live more than 50 miles from an office, you have until August to relocate. That's an interesting twist. First time I've seen that one in any of these mandates. This is also forcing a hybrid option. So notice, I'm not attacking RTOs. I'm not attacking hybrid. I'm not attacking fully remote. I'm saying don't force the issue. That's the whole if you want the bottom line up front, 100,000 foot view, it's don't force the issue. Give them the options and let them choose. That relocation that I was just talking about, move close to an office or quit. That is a harsh ultimatum. A very harsh ultimatum. That is the equivalent of the nuclear option. Do what we say or you're gone. And again, badge-in data will be used to assess individual presence and shared with managers, human resources, and a senior VP. A senior VP is going to be checking everybody's badge. Human resources is going to be checking everybody's badge. I don't know about anybody else, but that sounds like an extremely big waste of time. That is human capital. Deloitte has a whole human capital trends article that they put out every year. It's a fascinating read, actually, but that is thousands of hours of human capital to be a nanny. That's an expensive freaking nanny. Again, 2021, so this was almost 2.5, getting close to 3 years. Told him in June, Got to be back in September. All right. They gave him a few months notice, but still, if I remember correctly, this is the one where they actually didn't even allow a hybrid at that point. Ah, there it is. Yes. The memo didn't specify whether or not the employees will have the option to continue remote work either full-time or part-time, but did say IBM has, and they quoted this, I love that, long established practices and policies supporting work-life balance, which will continue as we return to the office. Those of us that can read between the lines, that just said there is no remote, there is no hybrid. Get your butt into your chair, pull it up to your desk, get to work. Again, that's the nuclear option. That do not put, don't corner the bear. Come on, people. Your employees are the bear. Don't corner them. Don't put them in that situation. Then we've got my articles. This was the first one, September 2020. This article is linked inside my article. Wow, that sounded weird. Go with it. May 2020, Facebook announced major shift to a permanent remote workforce. That comes into play again later. Shopify. Digital by default. Offices closed till 2021 so we can rework them for this new reality. Another key phrase that comes in later. And most will work permanently remote. Office centricity is over. Former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, permanent work from home strategy. That was May 12th, 2020. Yes, I'm not hating on Twitter on this one because completely new leadership. It's a new CEO. It's also now X, but it is what it is. Second part of the series was a inverse of the first one. And it was also a collaborative effort with Diana Moldovan, who at the time was the CISO of Aviva in the UK. Very, very wonderful woman. Love her to death. But the biggest thing I wanted to show in here, this was redacted when I got it, so I can only assume that it is a founder and CEO at a major corporation. Let me make one thing clear, and I cannot stress this enough. If a company still needs an office to operate after its people have crushed it working remotely during a global pandemic, they won't make it through this decade. Now, having a CEO of a major corporation like that say, you're not going to make it through this decade unless you accept the fact that the options exist. Whew. Third article in the series basically tries to sum it all up and tries to point out that the problem is choice. Who has it? Who should be the one making it? I actually bring that up right here. The organization should not make that choice. Who does? Well, who does it affect? The person it affects should be the one making the choice. And the answer to that is the employees themselves. Now, if you look, that's November 2020. This was October 2020. September, October, November, all 3 months, same thing. And I was actually saying it pre-pandemic. We jump over to LinkedIn, got a poll from Magnet 2 weeks ago, excluding wage increases, obviously. What do you feel is the most effective strategy for improving worker experience? And 64% said offer remote options. When I commented on it a week ago, there was only 1,050 people, and it was 65%. Right there. 65% of 1,050 people. Yeah, that's me. Only my beard's a lot bigger now, obviously. Posting from a friend of mine. Noticing a fair amount of long-time connections in my network that were at Amazon who just implemented a return to office policy. Seems like RTO is a common denominator here. So let's tally this up a little bit before we get into some more articles. So that tally, we've got polls at LinkedIn at 65%, 64%. Major Fortune 500 companies that are having talent run for the hills, and example upon example upon example of employee and even managerial pushback against these policies. So let me ask these two simple questions. First question, is the executive leadership levels of these organizations of the belief that these higher percentages of attrition and loss of talent are within an acceptable range? We are talking about 65% here. That is not a small amount. Second question, why are the executive leadership levels of these organizations trying to change the world back to a way of working that clearly the employees are adamantly against? 5,000 employees in 2 weeks. SAP. That's a clear flashing neon sign saying, "Hey, we're not with this. Don't force us. Stop." Now the answer to that first question confounds and eludes me. So if you have the answer, please put it in the comments. I'd love to read it. But the answer to the second might shine a little bit of explanation on it. So there's only three real possible answers to that second question. Executive leadership levels are forcing one of these options, fully remote, fully in office, or RTO. I'm sorry, hybrid, for some combination of these three answers. The first, real estate. Google had just built a multi-billion-dollar facility right before the pandemic. Of course, they're going to want to get use out of it. And that's just one example. But I know several companies that closed some of their smaller offices, only kept one or two of the larger ones open, and provided the options. So in reality, you could save money by providing those options because you don't need the big facility to hold 165,000 people. You can bring that to a much smaller facility that's only a multi-million-dollar project and bring back 50, 65,000, however many decide that's the option they want. So you can save that money. Second, control. At a side job that I was doing a test for during the pandemic, the security team at that organization received so many requests for logs to, and I'm going to quote this, prove my direct reports are actually working. Sorry, bub, security cannot be your nanny. These tools exist to secure the organization, not spy on the employees. If you don't trust your employees or you don't think they're working, they're not meeting their goals, or they're not even close to their key performance indicators, yeet them. Security cannot be your babysitter. Their security teams are already lean. Organizations are huge. We don't have the time to babysit. And then you have companies like Google with their turnstile, SAP, Ernst& Young, all implementing those logging badge key styles, tracking that attendance. And again, I quote, to ensure the employees are in the office when they're supposed to be. If that does not show a level of distrust in your employees and a level of micromanagement that should have been unfathomable, then I don't know what does. And for what? Why bring it to that level? Was too many of your employees not making their KPIs? I mean, why go that far? Do you just want butts in seats? Do you care if it's the right butt for the seat? Or do you just care that there's a butt in it? That'll make a little even more sense in just a few too. Which actually brings us to the third. And sadly, I saw this in several cases during the course of the research for this article that turned into a podcast that's quickly turning into a rant. These organizations are putting these employees in a take it or leave it ultimatum position, as is evident by IBM's literal ultimatum. Don't like it, leave. There's a company in India right now, last chance to return to office, extending the deadline to March. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Last chance to return to the office, extending the deadline to the end of March. And it just says consequences. Does not say why. Does not, or what, I should say. Does not say what those consequences are. Just consequence. Like they're John Wick. They're not. But here is a twist. And here's where that abstract type of thinking comes in. That bizarre, off the wall, my brain's everywhere, all at once, all at the same time. What if that's the real reason? What if putting those employees in that take it or leave it position and them choosing to leave to somewhere that does offer the options? What if that is the reason? I get it. The economy's down. The reason it's down broaches a topic that I will never discuss, and that's politics. I may nudge politics once in a while, but it's main if I nudge politics, it's to make a statement of fact. But I will not discuss politics. But the bottom line is organizations are hurting right now. You know it, I know it, we all know it. So, but if that's the case, if that's the reason, is to reduce the workforce without a layoff or a reduction in force, why are these organizations putting their top tier talent in the position of having to look for something else? Think about that for just a moment. Why are they putting that at risk? Is losing your talent by forcing them to choose going to cost more than paying a severance or unemployment benefits from a layoff? I can tell you, in the long term, it's clear the unemployment benefits would have been a far cheaper option if that is the reason. There are too many remote options out there to take that kind of a risk. Or any kind of forced option is most likely, as in more than greater than 50%, put your top talent tier in the position of, like IBM said, take it or leave it, and they will go somewhere that does offer those options. And all that will be left are the dead weight, the cooks in your kitchen that can't boil water, and those that are so close to retirement that it would be a detriment for them to leave. So let's go back to that economic discussion for a quick minute. And I'm going to put the echo sound effect on this one just in case anyone missed it the first time. The economy is down. Some employees that had those options took the opportunity to move to a lower cost of living area or an area with a better school system with the understanding that their organization was not reevaluating their current work stance. They didn't pull a Google. They didn't pull an SAP. They didn't pull an IBM. They didn't do a complete 180 about face on their stance. They were not evaluating that. That was the understanding your employees went into this with. And these organizations keep using phrases like we're family or we're all on the same team or we're all in this together and all the other pizza party-esque cliches. Let me tell you something. Family would want you to have the option. Family would want you to have that work-home separation and that healthy physical interaction at the water cooler if that's what you need. Or family would want you to save that money on gas, vehicle maintenance, save yourself the stress of a daily commute on a crappy road. That is not an Alabama specific problem. There are literally jokes from all 50 states about how their DOTs have been working on their roads since the fall of Rome. Obviously, since the U.S. was not a thing at the fall of Rome, there's the joke, but kind of loses its effectiveness if you have to explain it. But hell, I-20 and I-59 over in Atlanta, they've been under constant construction since I moved to Georgia when I was 5. And you can guess how long ago that was. But a commute like that will start affecting both mental health and work output. Because sitting in traffic, getting frustrated, somebody cuts you off, or somebody's going too slow in the fast lane means you're going to come into work frustrated and ticked off. And that there's no way that cannot affect your work output. Family would want you to have options and not be forced into one. A team. A team would want you to be happy, helpful, productive, and not stressed out by having your choice stripped away. And people that are in this together, they know that you can't lead from either the front or from behind. True leaders lead from the middle. They're in the thick of it, right next to those they purport to lead. Business Insider acknowledges this fact that forcing these options is a complete disruption of your employees' lives. Companies forcing workers to come back to office are creating a massive disruption. And this goes right back to what I said. Moved cities, bought houses, invested in home offices, all under the impression that their organization was not going to change the status quo. They weren't going to change what they were doing at that moment. So in the words of Michael Weston from Burn Notice, and yes, I speak a lot in movie, TV, and music quotes.
Cause any trouble?
Sam, don't sprinkle sugar on this bowl and call it candy.
As leaders, we cannot have target fixation. We cannot have tunnel vision, blinders, or whatever you want to call it. We have to step back. We have to zoom out and ask the hard questions. How will this be received by my teams? How will this affect other things downstream? What other variables and angles am I missing? If we don't, if we have that target fixation where that's all we can see, the consequences can be catastrophic for your organization. If we have that target fixation, we are the hunter from the first Jurassic Park. He was so fixated on that one raptor that he missed the one coming from the side until... Clever girl. Well, your employees are the raptors. And the executive leadership level that's pushing this, they're that hunter. And that hunter is looking mighty tasty right now. Now, I used that Jurassic Park reference because of this next article that literally called return to office mandates dinosaur management. Now, their meaning was more to highlight it as an antiquated, extinct mentality and way of managing. But either way, the analogy still fits both ways. I'm just trying to provide the information so we as leaders don't end up in that clever girl scenario. So here we've got Business Insider just a day after the original article was set to drop. Timing could not have been better on this. Forcing workers back to office is dinosaur management and companies risk losing out. That's what I've been saying. A losing battle, experts say, with the micromanagement likely to drive out top talent. Then you've got the statement, they're using punitive measures like limited career progression or exempt from bonuses. So if you don't do what we say, you're not going to get promoted and you're not going to get your bonuses ever again. Wrap your head around that. Think about that one for a minute. Because then we have this perfectly timed article from, or not, I'm sorry, not article, advertisement from Monster.com that I believe I saw Super Bowl Sunday. Of course, Monster.com is one of the top job search platforms, and they're illustrating return to office mandates as medieval times way of managing. Take a look.
Sorry.
Attention folks, we've got hogs in the road. We're going to be delayed.
Having to commute is history. Search work from home jobs at monster.com.
So here's the rub. And from here forward in this podcast, I'm going to call the executive leadership level the executive ring of power. It'll make sense later. Executive ring of power wants things to go back to the way it was before, the pre-pandemic way of things. Hate to break it to you. This is the end of the third age. Frodo has already made it to Mount Doom. He's already lost his finger. Gollum's already fallen in the lava, and that ring of power is destroyed. And I just unintentionally kept up that same medieval times alliteration. Funny old world, isn't it? But anyway, before anyone tries to crucify me for saying that the executive ring of power is destroyed, let me explain. What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. I deal in facts. hard data. And that data, those facts, are indisputable, irrefutable, and really do not care about your feelings. First off, making any knee-jerk reaction based solely on feelings is instantly wrong. While you may end up reaching the same end result and the same decision, let cooler heads prevail. Step back, act on facts and feelings. I mean, I've shown that while I'm passionate about this topic, feelings, I'm backed up by articles, polls, other opinion articles, statistics, and I probably have another 100 or so resources to pick from showing that forcing either direction will fail, and that only by offering options will you succeed. So why the Ring of Power reference? First of all, the Ring of Power in Tolkien's world had the power to dominate and control all of the races of Middle-earth, and the ring wanted to get back to the hand of its master. Sound familiar? The executive ring of power wants to be the master exerting dominance and control and bring back the pre-pandemic ways, much like Sauron wanted to cover the lands in a second darkness. Well, the pandemic was the battle at the Black Gates of Mordor. It proved the options work. Now, admittedly, did it force the Ring of Power to accept and allow those options? Yes. We've already proven that forcing anything will cause blowback. And that may even be what we're seeing with all of these different mandates. Could be a, 3-year delayed blowback? But the problem with that is
the world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air.
I love Lord of the Rings. And when this big of a shift happens, when this big of a change happens, we have to decide whether we want to flow with the new current or try to paddle upstream. And I think that's what we're seeing from the employee side. The executive ring of power is paddling upstream to get to what was before. Employees are just kind of going with the flow because can't change the flow. So I said I'd go back and talk about the Zoom Pinnacle of Work thing. That is an absolutely deliciously ironic example of the employees going with current and the executive ring of power trying to paddle upstream. Zoom, again, touted itself as the pinnacle of work from home collaboration tools and then pushed a return to office mandate, even though it was a 2-3 split. They pushed a hybrid mandate. Let your head wrap around there for a minute. Now, they were a little bit smarter about it. One of the articles I saw actually had the number at 1% showing up at the office, and the other 99 either leaving or just saying nope until Zoom reversed that policy. But the question is, if you're supposed to be the best work from home collaboration tool, why push a mandate at all? Can we as customers trust your word again because your actions speak louder than words? You said the permanent was permanent. If the permanent's not permanent, then it can't be permanent to begin with. Sorry. Now I also do understand business circumstances change. I get it. I've run multiple businesses starting at the age of 14. I get it. But as a businessman, you have to know you cannot run something, especially something that large, by yourself. The employees need you as much as you need them. SAP, same boat. Perfect lead into the next part of this, actually. The trust barrier. Love talking about the trust barrier. Going back to SAP's, the articles we showed earlier, thousands of employees at Europe's largest software company, SAP, have signed a letter saying they feel betrayed by the firm's radical change in direction on its back to office directive, with many threatening to leave rather than return to offices or work on site with customers at least 3 days a week starting in April. We read it earlier. Your employees feel betrayed. The same holds true for any organization. If you've been saying, here are your options, that's where Zoom comes back in. We're not reevaluating our work from home, hybrid, fully in office position like Facebook and Salesforce. They said they weren't reevaluating. Bam! Out of nowhere. Here's your mandate. How exactly are your employees supposed to trust you ever again? You've lied to their faces. That trust barrier is broken, can never be rebuilt. Factor that trust barrier being shattered into the equation, and the high attrition and low retention rates make a lot more sense now, don't they? Here's the article I referenced in that first article that I wrote about Facebook, and I did not include Salesforce in the first article, but I found the same thing from Facebook and Salesforce. This is the article that I referenced. It was The Verge. It was May 21st, 2020. Permanently shifts. Permanent. Here's 3 years later. Not quite, but close. Now they have to return to office before September 5th of 2023. Why? Why say one thing and then about face for no explanation, no transition, no, hey, we understand that you signed on with this intent, but that doesn't fly for us anymore? You just broke a deal. Don't break deals. That means your word is nothing. Salesforce, 9 to 5 workdays dead. 3 ways, including the possibility of working from home forever. Ah. SAP is another one that I believe you've covered that one earlier with the article here about faced return to office. Sorry, got hit by a paywall on that one. Now, this is about as close to discussing politics as I ever get. And I'm only bringing it up for one reason that will be clear in just a few moments, like seconds. On one hand, you have these organizations, IBM, Facebook, Salesforce, SAP, telling us that we need to stop using fossil fuels and be more environmentally conscious. A lofty goal. I pray it happens. More than you know. But then you have this hand saying that. Then you have this hand coming in saying, no, we want all 5,000 of you to be on the road twice a day for an unnecessary commute. Or IBM, where no, you have to drive into the office if you're within 50 miles. And if you're not within 50 miles, you have to move your butt into 50 miles. Actions and words. I nudged the political just long enough to point the hypocrisy of the contradicting views versus actions. Which is it? less oil, fossil fuel, carbon emissions, or more driving. You can't have both. And more importantly, you can't force both. Here are, and these are actually directly from these different organizations: IBM, Salesforce, Facebook, SAP. We'll start with IBM. Climate change early apologies, support for a price on carbon. What? You're supporting a price on carbon emissions, yet you are the reason that there's more people on the road putting out carbon emissions? Facebook. Gotta love Facebook, right? Commitment to climate change. Think about that. These are the same companies telling all of their employees, get within either get within 50 miles or come into the office. That they're putting more people on the road. They're putting more carbon emissions out there while telling everybody else no. Salesforce, same thing. Critical step in the climate action plan of what? Putting more carbon emissions into the atmosphere? SAP. You just put 5,000 more people on the road. Is that your plan to end climate change? Because if it is, you might want to reevaluate your strategy just a bit. Because you're not even playing checkers at this point. Not with that stance. Just got a couple more. So this one's from Interesting Engineering. 90% of companies will return to office in 2024. One big thing that I have against this one, it says Gen Z is the most likely cohort to favor this arrangement. I'm going to prove that wrong in just a second. This is the issue right here. Depending on who you're speaking to, the attitudes to the office and what it facilitates and represents are drastically different. That is extremely important to understand. Vastly different. Now, the issue that I have with the Gen Z being the likely cohort, I don't think so. Gen Zers are not the only ones that are fed up right now. Granted, every previous generation always loves to rag on the younger generation, and the younger generation likes to rag on the older generations. But yeah, I'm sorry. It's everything from boomers that are getting close to retirement, if not already retired. It's Xers, it's Zennials, it's even millennials in a few cases, all saying the same thing. This one hurt me because there is absolutely no excuse for her to be the only one not working from home. And I hope she gets justice for the injustice that she's had to endure. This one's from an HR website, HR Exchange Network to be exact. A little over 2 months ago. Not that long. Even Human Resources is telling you RTO is dead. Now that, yes, is a direct hit on RTOs, not hybrid or work from home. That's a direct shot at RTO. Then you got Yahoo over here saying that, hey, That's a perk for the wealthy, most educated workers. You mean the ones that you've already just ticked off? Plus, I know people with master's degrees that are being forced back into their offices. That doesn't quite jive either. And then, of course, you know, I like to cover both sides of an argument here. There are downsides to remote work that people don't talk about, some of which I disagree with. But remember when I showed you the article about career advancement and bonuses? Second place, that's confirmation. Increased likelihood being laid off. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what they do. Bye. This is why it has to be options. Because some people do struggle with that isolation. Some people can't be alone. Not being taken seriously by friends and family. That is a psychological thing that I have personally have not witnessed, experienced, or even heard of people having that problem. Doesn't mean to say that it doesn't, but that I have not seen it. Neglecting healthy habits. I only eat one meal a day as it is. My lunch hour, a lot of times, I'll go for a walk. And if I'm home, I can walk whether it's raining. Alabama, which pretty much melts the gates of hell every summer, I could go upstairs and use a treadmill. Get the same walking, but some companies offer that. A lot of companies don't. But why force the issue? Difficulty getting out of work mode. This is for the people that I was talking about that use it as a form of work-life balance. I had a coworker about 3 or 4 years ago. He didn't even have internet at his house. He didn't want it. When he left work, he was done. He didn't have to worry about it. And that's how he was able to flip back and forth between work mode and home mode. I'm nuts. I'm insane. I never get off of work mode. I dream in code. I dream in scripting. I have actually written a Python script in my dream. And then you have MSN swinging in yesterday. Return to office policies aren't working. Corporate desperation is kicking in. Could it be that the executive ring of power is actually listening finally? Listening to what their employees have been screaming from the rooftops for? And this brings up a perfect segue that I'm going to actually come back to. So I'm going to save this article. We as leaders have to provide options if we expect to retain talent. Some people cannot deal with the total isolation of a fully work from home. We just saw that. Some people don't have a space they can dedicate to a home office. There are some that, like I said, my coworker use it as a separation of work and home. And then there are some that have seen and done some things in their lives, and now they tend to shy away from large groups of people. Gonna pull another Lord of the Rings reference just to lighten the mood just a little bit. You know of whom I speak. The biggest thing though is look at the data that is smacking you in the face. 98 to 99% of Zoom said, not happening. 65% on LinkedIn polls, 5,000 employees in 2 weeks. Let's go nuclear here. Are you prepared to lose 65% of your organization? Dig even further. Are you okay limiting your talent pool to a geographic area? See, my network, my professional network, 90% of that network is remote options or they're not interested. Now, my network is tiny in comparison to most people's, but it's a decent number. They will not work for any return to office organization. If it's not a minimal hybrid or remote, they won't even touch it. They don't want anything to do with it. And a lot of them, even if it's a hybrid option, they won't touch it. Not to mention that by limiting your talent pool to a geographic location, you just blasted geographic diversity right out of the water. So there's an entire framework that puts the decision on timelines, requirements, etc., in the hands of the people actually doing the work. It's the most successful development framework of all time when used correctly, and it's called Agile. And here's why it works. And this is where I'm going to catch the heat. This is where I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but that's kind of what I do. Ask any executive ring of power individual what exactly it takes to make their department run efficiently and correctly. And I will damn near guarantee you that not a single one will provide a complete and accurate description of everything that it takes. Because they don't know. That's why we have these specialists in those roles. So they know. So they can make it work. And now we're about to lose them. Then there are those that will pull the quiet quitting or malicious compliance and do just enough that they meet expectations when they used to exceed them. Don't believe me? Let me go back to that MSN article real quick. The shift coupled with instances of quiet quitting reflects a disconnect between corporate desires and employee preference, further pointing out employees are adamantly against it. Add the recent layoffs, because this just came out on the 11th, and now you've got them quiet quitting just because of layoffs and because a lot of the executive ring of power, they all know each other. One goes one way, a lot of them follow. So like, crap, just had a huge layoff. You know what's coming next. Look what happened at Zoom. They had a big layoff and then they've implemented an RTO. Screw it, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. And that is the perspective that you're going to hear because of all this. Then you got the malicious compliance. Shadow policies is what Forbes called it, but coffee badging. Basically, they show up, swipe their badge, grab a cup of coffee, earn an imaginary badge for actually being there, and then went home to work. Think about that. If your employees have to go under the radar to work remotely, which literally the heading, you've got problems. This is my biggest thing. Diminishes workplace flexibility, which they need for a better work-life balance. You can have a work-life balance either way. The biggest thing is don't force the bloody issue. Every organization is a machine. Every employee is a cog in that machine. The higher you climb the leadership ladder, the bigger your cog becomes. Here's the problem, and not problem, but here's the trick with that. Basic mechanics and mechanology. The smaller cogs will spin more times per minute than the larger cogs. Convert that to stakeholder work output. Let's go small and say it's a 10-to-1 ratio. 10 rotations of the smaller cog to each rotation of the larger. That's not to say the larger cogs do less work or are less important. Their job is to ensure the smaller cogs keep spinning and powering the stakeholder and stockholder machine. But this is to demonstrate, through analogy, that the employee gets the work done that management needs to get done to meet those deadlines, to get the product on the shelves when and where it needs to be, and basically keeping the machine running smoothly is what differentiates you from your competition. A larger cog gets broken, it can potentially be repaired. If it's just a small crack, yeah, I might be able to weld that. Your smaller cogs, when they break, they typically have to be replaced. And even a small cog can cause an entire machine to hiccup or stop. So my point is, let's not hit the cogs with a sledgehammer, please. For example, by, forcing them to take it or leave it from any mandate. And that holds even more true when your teams are lean and small. A single cog, a single team member, can bring an entire project to a screeching halt. This is 100% a situation where force is not the answer. Now, when that machine is running smooth, the organization makes money. Hit that machine with a force hammer, whether it's a forced work from home or a forced return to office or a forced hybrid, we've already seen all of it. You're going to see these same things. The moment you plant your flagpole in one camp, the other camp is immediately going to consider you an enemy. You choose, it's like college football in-state rivalries. You choose one, the other school hates you. So I live in Alabama. That's common knowledge. The two big camps are the University of Alabama and Auburn University. If you pick Auburn, Alabama fans will hate you. If you pick Alabama, Auburn fans will hate you, especially both directions in November, right around the Iron Bowl. So how do you avoid that? Simple. Don't plant your flagpole. Carry it with you and wave it proudly. Benjamin Disraeli said, change is inevitable. Change is constant. John C. Maxwell said, growth is optional. From my observations, the executive ring of power is chasing the growth is optional route by ignoring the data proving that forcing either direction will fail, while employees are embracing the options and looking more at the change is inevitable and change is constant direction. But hey, at the end of the day, it's the executive ring of power's decision. Hell, I'm just as insane as they are. I've been screaming this from the rooftops since 2019 before the pandemic, over and over again, expecting, well, mainly hoping, for a different result. Difference? I acknowledge and revel in my insanity. Like I said, all my talks, my website, my social medias, they all say the same thing. Powered by caffeine, sarcasm, and insanity. Another difference? I embrace change. I embrace growth. Change is what makes life fun and not boring. And here's why this became a podcast, not just an article, and why I'm so passionate about this topic. When I come into an organization, I come in with two mentalities. The first is that the majority of my career I have been red team. Lock picking, RFID cloning, pen testing, cameras, evasion, you name it. I still do red teaming to this day. So I come into the organization with a mentality, how would I stop me? How would I stop someone like me? The second mentality, and the more relevant one, is that is now my organization. My job is to protect that organization, to be the shield on the wall. And it's very infrequent, but just sometimes, that does mean protecting the organization from itself. And what I mean by that is, yes, I know the customer was promised whatever feature or app or whatever by this date, which is what the organization wants. But if you release it like it is, you'll definitely get breached. And here's how: protecting the organization from itself. Push the deadline back so you don't end up in a worse situation than you could possibly imagine. You implement this type of idea, you risk these dangers. In this case, if you implement a mandate, you will see this high attrition. You will see this stock drop, especially, and I'm bringing up stock drop for a lot of different reasons, as those employees that leave start leaving reviews on Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. You get the picture. That signals to everybody, all the financial analysts, oh, mass exodus, this is not good. Goes back to what I said earlier. A mass exodus looks just as bad in both the financial and PR worlds. At that point, it becomes, there's something going on, it ain't good, sell, sell, sell. And let's not gloss over the problems that Time magazine brought up, which is trouble backfilling positions in an RTO organization. And the same thing is happening in the UK. This is truly a global issue. Potential candidates will look at those said reviews, look at the fact they're RTO or have a mandate, and immediately say, nope, not interested. To quote the SCP article again, radical change in direction will have a wildfire effect in that respect. Candidates will look at those reviews, and it will bring up the question in their minds, do I want to work for an organization that's already lying to their employees? Then again, there are some people that'll happily jump at the opportunity just because they want that mandate, they want that structure. But looking at the 65% poll, and articles saying vast majority of the workforce does not want to work in the office, does not want to be forced to do anything except their job, which they're good at or they wouldn't be in the position, and looking at some of the penalties, I mean, excluding from bonuses, excluding from promotions, that some of these organizations are imposing on their remote workers, Google's pay cut article. Would you want to work for someone like that? Let me actually pull those up real quick. So this is the Time magazine, 7-minute read. Uh, Actually came out last year. So again, this information has been out there for a while. Highlights, bunch of different organizations, but the title is really what says it all. Companies requiring full-time in office are struggling to recruit new employees. That also helps back up the claim that Gen Z is not the ones there it is. Not the ones likely cohort in the arrangement. Sorry, just how it is. And like I said, Britain is having the same problem. 1 in 5 employers are struggling to fill job vacancies. Population didn't drop that much. I know that much. I may not know a lot, but I know that much. Ask yourself why. Why are these organizations having and it points back to those Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed, the reviews taking a nosedive. All of this data proves what has been theory for 3 years. But hey, what do I know? I'm just some schmuck in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. I'm going to leave you with two quotes. So we've proven with all of this data, the options work. That's a fact at this point. So I'm going to leave you with these two quotes from Einstein. When you stop learning, you start dying. That, of course, goes back to the growth is optional quote, but also if you're not learning from the mistakes of the past, the mistakes other people have made, you're not learning. In some respects, you're already dying. The last thing that this quote kind of highlights, I always talk about passion. Seek out your passion, learn everything you can about it, never stop. Prove Einstein right. Become immortal. Obviously, I know you can't actually become immortal, but you get the anecdote. Now, the second quote from Einstein, the difference between stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits. So let's learn from the stupidity of others so that we don't make the same mistakes they did. In a nutshell, what I'm basically saying is don't be this guy. This is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. He not only called remote workers losers sitting at home with a nasty cat blanket diddling on their laptop, which, as an IT professional, I find extremely offensive, but this is a particularly big issue for Minneapolis, which, along with St. Paul, is the most desirable location for Gen Z. He's calling Gen Z. Right here. Gen Z prefers laptop diddling and nasty cat blankets to going out. That just baffles me. I'm calling him out because in that one statement, calling Gen Z and those that want to work from home remotely, or those that want to only work from home some of the time, losers. He has essentially alienated every voter over the age of 35. So let's learn from the mistakes of others so we don't end up in the same boat. Basically, bottom line, what I'm saying, whatever direction you choose is up to you. Each organization is different with different needs, and I fully acknowledge, both in article and in talk, and again today, I fully acknowledge there are some industry verticals that truly cannot be remote. Food service, hospitality, healthcare, certain logistical positions, a large part of the energy sector, just to name a few. Yet there are so many organizations that would benefit from offering a choice. And with choice organizations, you can have the best of every world. You can have the people that want to be in the office, just a smaller office. The ones that you want to be fully remote, let them be fully remote. Let them be happy. Let them stay away from people. You'll find a lot of those are going to be IT. Just, again, personal observation. And if you want some, you may run into somebody that says, "Hey, yeah, 3-2 is fine with me," or 2-3 is fine with me, whatever. They can, you can take that. Those choice organizations can take advantage of the great local talent and the great remote talent that would bring the kind of diversity and new ways of abstract thinking to an organization. And those are the things that foster an environment of innovation. It's what makes your organization better. Many organizations worry that with options, they're not going to get the most out of their employees. That was something that was brought up during the talk at the 2022 Cyber Summit. If you have realistic KPIs and goals, as in don't bite off more than you can chew, and if someone isn't meeting those realistic goals, then you can reevaluate the options for that one person. And leaders should see that as an opportunity to bring that person in for closer counseling and make them a better, stronger member of the team. But stripping the choice from everyone as a punishment for the actions of one or even several individuals? I get the whole life's not fair, but that takes it a step above that. That's not fair or not fair, especially when you factor in the attitude of IBM. Take it or leave it. Physically move your entire family or find another job. When you factor that an attitude like that into play, that's not fair or not fair. That's getting screwed. Your employees are not going to like that. People are different. What is the path one employee chooses can and most likely will be the polar opposite of another employee, which is why options are so critical and why for the past 4 years I've been covering this topic saying the same thing. Don't force it. Provide the options. Listen to your employees' feedback. Give them the choice. My point is, offer the options where you can. It's like a marriage. Happy wife, happy life. The corporate equivalent, happy employee, profitable business. As was actually highlighted in Deloitte's 2024 Human Capital's Trend Report. Let me pull that up real quick. I already went ahead and jumped down, but there's a table of contents at the very top. But when people thrive, businesses thrive. The case for human sustainability. Now, if you remember, we saw another article earlier that said your standard KPI tasks versus hours worked approach can't work anymore. Because if it's just hours worked, task completed, all your little tasks are going to get done. None of your big tasks will. That's why Deloitte said you have to focus on human sustainability. It's a fascinating read. You should go back and, again, all of these links will be pinned to the top comment. But whatever choice you make sure it is one that you and your organization can live with.
Which one is it?
You must choose. But choose wisely.
Well, it's time for me to climb off my soapbox. I hope y'all enjoyed my first podcast. Hope it gave you something to think about, providing maybe a different perspective. And of course, all the articles I've talked about today pinned in the comments section. The ones that I wrote, I'll be pinned in the description. And if you like this content, again, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all the things. And keep an eye out for more content, because I'm barely getting warmed up. Cheers.